Our next speaker this evening is Jason Dennis. He is the Dean of Discipline here at OPRF. Jason, please begin by telling us a little bit about your role as Dean of Discipline. Some of us never had Deans of Discipline.
Thank you and good evening. Quickly, because we do have such a limited amount of time tonight, at Oak Park and River Forest High School we have 12 counselors who do a number of things, primarily academic counseling, emotional counseling, those types of things. We have 4 deans of discipline who can do some of that, but primarily we handle all the discipline and attendance for the 3,200 students in the building, run meetings and so on and so forth with parents and kids, mediate everything from fights, investigate thefts, follow up on drugs and attendance, truancy, tardies, so on and so forth, the tardy policy, which some of you are aware of, we're trying to work on right now. So that's my role. We deal with this every day. We deal with lots of different kids, although typically not, our entire caseload of 800 students, but enough of the 800 to keep us busy. I'd like to pick up at the beginning here and from this idea of peer pressure from Commander Williams and reiterate that in some conversations that I've had with several of the students over the course of my 2 years as a dean, in particular the last couple of days as I was preparing for this talk. I wanted to bring my thoughts together and make sure that the way I was understanding this issue was the way that our students were experiencing it. And that was certainly one of the big issues that came to bear in some of the comments from particularly freshmen that I talked to today. One of the things we haven't talked about yet is when is this beginning? When is this behavior getting started? And certainly it's different, for every kid. There'd be a mean age, but it's important to understand that from a number of the students I talked to that some members of their class, their cohort, if you will begin at a very early age, 5th grade, 6th grade, either being exposed by older siblings or friends of older siblings, so on and so forth. But it seems to be in the times, particularly between 8th grade and 9th grade, and actually typically, and I may have this number slightly wrong, but about half of our freshman class will attend summer school at Oak Park and River Forest High School between their 8th grade and 9th grade year. I'm not indicating that that's the cause of it, that they're coming to the high school, but it's certainly beginning to expose them in the parks and in the community group. They're meeting people who are a little bit older, and that some of them are being exposed to it. The next comment that jumped out at me was that typically when one of these students is asked to partake in smoking marijuana, for example, the first time they're really not prepared to answer. They know about it, they know that it's out there, they know that maybe somewhere in their brain they think, someday I may have to deal with this issue, but here it is, bam. And I'm within a group of my 5 friends or 7 friends, and the peer pressure comes to bear immediately in really bad situations combined with a lack of preparation to answer the question, maybe a lack of skills to deal with it at the time. And then, I said, well, what percent of your friends do you think are, smoking? And the answer I typically get runs very true to our statistics. We can debate how accurate they are, but, it's really coming from several different places. We're hearing about the same thing. 40 to 50% of our students at least once have smoked marijuana. Of that 40 or 50%, he said, initially about half will do it once and they won't do it again. They didn't like the experience. They didn't feel like they needed to continue in that realm, and the other half will continue to do it. Those that continue to do it really begin to adopt that lifestyle. It becomes a habit. And once you get in that group of someone who smokes marijuana in the school, there's an additional level of peer pressure, which is who can do more. We're all familiar with who can drink more. Well, it becomes who can smoke more. And I fear that with the 40 to 50% in combination with this factor, we've crossed a threshold where we have a critical mass of students who are smoking marijuana. And it's a similar thing with sex, where when you ask students how many of your friends are having sex, they say 80%. And when you ask them how many of you are having sex, they say 30%, right? There's this belief that more people are doing it than really are. But we've gotten to a point where so many of them are, and then you exacerbate that by saying, I feel like or believe that so many more of my friends are, that if I'm not, I feel like an extreme minority. We've also gotten to the point then of those students who are smoking, it's not what, if we were going to use stereotypes, it's not just the burnouts, right? Whoever that is. I don't know who that is, but it's not just that group. It's our athletes, it's our honors and AP students, it's our white students, it's our black students, it's our wealthy students, it's our low-income students, it's our students from all over both communities, and that's certainly what our statistics play out. So the peer pressure piece is extremely important. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit at the end. I was also asked to share some of our statistics. It seems hard to believe, I think, as I listen to Commander Williams' statistics and I look at our statistics, if we say 40 to 50% of our 3,200 students are smoking, that's 1,400 to 1,600 students, and yet when I give you our statistics, the number of students have been caught, there's a huge discrepancy, and that's something that I'll address briefly. Specifically, we've caught, and I'm going to give you the 08-09 to 2009-2010 comparisons, our distribution of drugs. Last year, we charged 2 students with that infraction. This year, we charged 3. Our possession of drug paraphernalia last year was 2 students. This year was 7 students. Students we found with possession of marijuana last year was 13 students. This year was 16 students. And students that we found to be under the influence of marijuana last year was 14, and here's the big jump to this year of 32. Now, I would add this. Of that 40 to 50% who are smoking marijuana, many of them aren't doing it before school or during school. And many of them aren't carrying it to school. Some are. Certainly it's available. Are there students in the building every day with marijuana that they're trying to sell? Absolutely. How are they marketing that? Oftentimes through text messages. I get phone calls from parents saying I was going through my student's phone and there was an unsolicited "please buy marijuana for me" text message from someone, reply to this number. I laugh because it's sad, not because I think it's funny. So why don't we catch that? I think we should mention that we have 3,200 students, a 1 million square foot building. We're trying to teach classes all over the place. We have a limited number of staff. We have 17 doors, an open campus. And a community that has a rich tradition of trusting our students and providing them with independence, and which limits some of the behaviors that we do, some of the procedures that we have, some of the rules we put in place. Certainly all of this is on the table. Certainly we're taking this seriously. There's a number of committees meeting right now. There is discussions about a closed campus. It's a complicated issue. It's not as simple, let's just do it, but certainly we're talking about it if we think that that's the right thing to do. We're going to hear from some students later, so I don't want to talk too much about who that is anymore. I do want to offer one piece here, because I'm not sure I'll get a chance to get a word in edgewise later on. There's so many of us here with so many things to say. So just yesterday, I had a student in who had been caught about 6 weeks ago for a major drug infraction. He received the school's consequences and therapy and so on and so forth, and part of his consequence was that after a month he was going to have to do what's called a drop. He was going to have to be tested for drug usage. And then I caught him again just 2 days ago, so about 6 weeks after he was caught. And I brought him in and we had a very frank conversation, and he said to me, after I got caught and I knew I had to do the drop, I didn't smoke for a month because I knew I had to pass that drop. But the minute I passed the drop, I knew I wasn't going to be tested again, and I went back to this behavior, which was still a habit. It was still a lifestyle, and he had, at that point, had gotten out of bed at 7 a.m. and smoked and had come to school. That got me thinking about how do we solve or kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. One is we need to give students an additional tool to fight the peer pressure, and 2, we need to give parents an additional tool to fight the feeling of over-monitoring their children. I know a lot of you want to trust your children, you want to believe that they're doing the right things, you don't want to invade their privacy and read all their text messages and make them greet you every night when they get home, but where is the middle ground? And I think this issue of the drug testing piece with the resources for providing therapy and counseling we have in the community, I would love us to develop some sort of program, and I'm not sure where it comes from or how it's monitored or administered, but that we would have a volunteer, and I stress volunteer, random or for that matter even mandatory drug testing program for parents who want to get their students a nice excuse to say, I can't do that because my parents signed me up for this, and any Monday I come to school I might get tested in a non-invasive way, certainly in a not anonymous way, but right, that we're not advertising any of this, that you wouldn't know that it happened, and that instead of them being, us being reactive, we be proactive. Instead of them going to the discipline system, they would go into a therapy situation where the families would be communicated with, not necessarily the school. I think we need to think about some creative strategies for that. I'm well over my time. Thank you very much.